be defeated when moderate Arab and Muslim populations in the region reject it. And therefore, the way forward seems to me to run clearly through a coalition of Arab and Muslim partners and not through the ownership of the United States in this issue. And so the strategy does that. It seeks to build a coalition, encourage an inclusive government to address the grievances that have caused this in the first place.
You know, when I heard that, I was so bitterly disappointed, but I didn't almost fall off my chair because I've heard it all before. You know, we need to address the grievances. That's what they said about Hamas. That's what they say about all the terrorists that do this kind of stuff. We need to address the grievances. Yeah, maybe we should call up Al-Qaeda and say, hey, you know, let's address the grievances you had when you knocked down the Twin Towers. Joining us now, as I take a deep breath, is Peter Brookes, Senior Fellow of National Security Affairs at the Heritage Foundation, former Deputy Assistant of Defense, and former U.S. Navy Commander. Hello, Peter.
Good afternoon.
I think I said that right. Anyway, you know, you wrote a great piece, Obama too fond of fairy tales, and of course this whole administration's too fond of fairy tales. And before we get to Obama, what we heard yesterday from the Joint Chiefs Chair about, you know, this addressing the grievances. You know, if we put a certain ethnicity in the parliament in Iraq, they'll stop chopping off the heads of Christians? I mean, you talk about a fairy tale.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's an interesting way to characterize that, and it's interesting coming from a military man. But he said what he said, and I guess we're just going to have to go from there. But obviously, when you're talking about Iraq or Syria, you're talking about a viper's nest. This is very, very dangerous. There are dangerous individuals, and groups, whether you're talking about the government of Bashar Assad or Jabhat al-Nusra, which is an al-Qaeda group, or ISIS, or any of the other Islamist groups. I mean, this has gotten really bad, and the president, and we may all pay a price for the president's lack of attention to what is going on in that part of the world.
Yeah, and today John Kerry, Peter, said, that ISIS is a cult masquerading as a religion. We heard from the president talking about the fact that ISIS is not Islamic and not a state. Again, fairy tales. I mean, if someone's practicing their version of a religion based on religious texts, and they kill in the name of what they believe is their religion, doing what they believe that religious text tells them to do, guess what? That's their version of Islam. That's why we call it radical Islam, and that's what they're practicing.
And the reason we should be even more concerned, Steve, is the fact is what's going on in Capitol Hill today. There's a lot going on in Capitol Hill today, obviously, with these hearings, but also the beginning of this Benghazi special committee. Because the relationship I see is I worry about the administration and this issue in general. We had the Fort Hood shooting on their watch. We had the Boston bombers. We had the president telling us Al Qaeda was on the run. We had what they told us about Benghazi. We had the president saying that ISIS a few months ago was a junior varsity. I mean, we left Syria self-reliant and secure. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to be concerned about the lines that they've been feeding us and whether they're up to dealing with this major threat going all the way back to Benghazi and before that. Remember, they originally called Fort Hood, workplace violence.
Well, it still is. It still is, isn't it?
So you're just seeing more of this. I mean, you're seeing the same sort of thing, and I guess I'm not you don't sound surprised, but I mean, I see as par for the course, and that's why it's so important for Congress to be involved with this and others to be speaking out about it, because what I worry is that, I thought maybe it was just politics or it was, certain sort of rhetoric, but I'm worried that they really believe some of this stuff they're saying.
Yeah, well, workplace violence, not terrorism. I think that has not changed officially, as far as I know. And also, it came to light last week that in the case of the Boston bombing, the Treasury Department has not that they've said it wasn't, but they have not classified it as an act of terror. And there are financial considerations there that may be in on that. and they saved a ton of money to the victims and the living victims and the families of the dead victims in Fort Hood as well, in addition to the political ramifications. So yeah, it is a total fantasy land. And a misleading fantasy land. If maybe that's repetitive, but it's like you said, it's dangerous.
No, absolutely dangerous. I mean, this is not. These are serious threats that we're facing. I mean, when I think about this, I mean, look at the situation as it is in Iraq. I mean, a lot of this comes from the president's disinterest or inattention. I certainly can't channel him, but as an outside observer, that's the sense that I have. And I mean, that Syria-Iraq theater is a very nasty, dangerous place that is not only a threat to the region and the countries around it, it's also a threat to Europe and the United States by extension.
Yeah, and now militarily speaking, what the president it's about?
Yeah, I mean, look, we have to be adults here. I mean, we know that policy has a political side to it, right? I mean, so he's saying this, and because he does it. The last place, as I wrote in that column last week, and I wrote another Boston Herald column today talking about it, about the problems with the president's strategy towards ISIS. The last place the president wanted to be last Wednesday night was standing up there telling America we have a terrorism problem. That runs completely counter to the narrative he's tried to spin since he's been in office. And, so in other words, he's saying he doesn't want to go. He criticized George Bush and the Republicans about Iraq, and the last thing he wants to do is put American forces back in there. He wanted to be the president that was going to end the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. And of course, the way he ended the war in Iraq, you see what it is sown, right? But he doesn't want to go there. And the general, who is the senior military advisor to the president, I think was speaking the truth. And he would speak truth to power. Mr. President, I can't meet your military goals. At some point in the future potentially. And I says I think we need troops on the ground. And the president, as the commander in chief, certainly has the right to say no. Figure out another plan. Come back to me with a plan that include American troops on the ground. And now he said it, instead of leaving all options on the table, he said it, and then if he has to go back on it, it's even worse for him.
Let me. That was a great piece that you wrote today. O's to-do list: gain allies, aid, take ISIS fight to Syria. And I want to talk about the Syrian rebels in a second. But I mean, God forbid one of our planes gets shot down. God forbid our pilot is or multiple pilots are taken prisoner. And we need we go get the plane. We need to go get the prisoners or whatever. Our pilots. Who's going to do that? The fictional Saudi troops that are going to be on the ground. I mean, who's? Well,
it's also a fiction that we don't have boots on the ground. I mean, how many? What are there? 1,000, 1,500
yep.
Americans there already.
Yep.
Doing things. Defending the embassy and the consulate. They're involved in training and advising and providing intelligence to the Iraqi forces. I mean, we do have boots on the ground. So what do we really mean by boots on the ground? We talk about, he said large scale, I think. He's talking about large numbers of Americans involved there. And we'll just have to see how this all plays out. But you're right. Yeah. God forbid that we have an American taken. And we have to do it, but that's we do have special forces types, and they're not even admitting that they're there. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's okay.
Yeah.
We all get it. We don't want to talk about it. There's things you don't want to talk about.
Right.
But we got special operations forces. I have no doubt on the ground there helping out the Iraqis with that, and we don't include them as boots on the ground. So
right.
That's the little that's a convenient fiction that we have. But yeah, we do have that, and he may have to send more, and he's maybe telling things to Congress that he's not telling the American people for reasons. I mean, I hate to say this, but I believe that there's some things that should remain secret for, the purposes of national security. So, Congress is doing their oversight role. They're probably briefing them on things. And, we don't know everything. And we don't have complete transparency for the safety and security of those people that are going in harm's way.
Yeah.
And so, I think we get that, and I think we have to accept that. So we probably don't have the entire story on that.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, you're right. You're right. And it's hard to when you're told misinformation or disinformation, then you try to analyze it and work under those assumptions. It does get kind of muddy.
That's what we deal with on the outside.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not government.
Right. Absolutely.
But Congress should be looking at this closely, and they should be getting the full brief.
I would hope so. We didn't have a chance to get to the Benghazi hearings. We'll do that another time. They just got underway today. Peter, thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
All right, my pleasure. Peter Brookes, ladies and gentlemen, Senior Fellow of National Security Affairs at the Heritage Foundation, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense. That's the word I was reaching for and could not find in the introduction, but subsequently I have come up with it. And a former U.S. Navy commander as well. It's just taking an option off the table, or saying you're taking the option off the table if you don't mean it. Either way, there's no point of it except for political purposes as it relates to your radical left-wing base. What can I tell you? All right, folks, you know what's next. You know what, you love it, you got to have it. It's Give Me 5 on the Steve Malzberg Show.